Welcome to Rad Talk, where sports and medicine collide. I'm your co-host Gage.
And I'm Dennis. And this is welcome to the first episode. We're just going to be going over our introductions, as well as how we met, the inspiration for the podcast, and the future we see going with this podcast. I'm just going to start by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Canton, Ohio, Pro Football Hall of Fame city. I grew up playing all kinds of sports. I was very involved in soccer. I loved basketball. Basketball was a big passion, just watching it. I was a big NBA fan. I went to college at Kent State University, where I got a bachelor's degree. I went on to get a degree in sonography, where I did ultrasounds. And then I also have a master's degree, MBA with a concentration in healthcare management. I got my first job out of school working in the Carolinas. And from there, I worked there for a period of time and then got into the travel world, which is what I'm also going to be talking to you guys a lot about traveling and the clinical side and the business side and all of those different things that correlate with that. And then I'm just going to allow my co-host Gage here to tell you a little bit about himself.
Yeah. So I share a similar story to Dennis here. We both grew up in the Midwest. I'm just from probably a worse state, even in Illinois. Grew up in a cornfield. So born and raised. Like Dennis, I played sports growing up. You can't really tell, if you're listening via audio or the video, you can't tell size. So I played football because I'm a bigger guy. And then first 2 years of high school, I actually played basketball. I don't think I ever told Dennis that. And then with my size, it got a little cumbersome to run up and down the court. And actually, my best friend in high school was he's an avid wrestler. He was one of the guys that was like 3 years old, and he's been wrestling the whole time. And he's like, hey, you should just, give wrestling a try. So I ended up giving wrestling a try. Actually turned out to like it probably more than I did. Football was more of a natural. It wasn't wrestling is very tough, but it wasn't as much running up and down on the hardwood. So it was a little bit easier for someone my size, to kind of wrestle. So I did that for a couple years. I played football in college. Actually, I attended a small, liberal arts college in one of the suburbs of Chicago called Elmhurst, where I studied biology, got my degree in biology, and then I actually went on to medical school. So I did medical school in Kirksville, Missouri. You do your first 2 years there, and then I did my last 2 years somewhere else, but it was all in Missouri. And then after medical school, for those that are in medicine, you'll know, but for those that aren't, you go on to do residency. So I did residency in diagnostic radiology in Springfield, Illinois, which is 45 minutes from where I grew up. And then currently I'm in my last year of fellowship, last year of training, which is called fellowship for MSK. And kind of one thing Dennis and I will get into here shortly is kind of how we met. And it was actually through, during residency. But the name, the Rad Talk name comes from the fact that Dennis and I are both do radiology. He focuses on the ultrasound part. And then as a radiologist, I'm the one that will read the images, that Dennis gets for the scans. But that's kind of just, that's where part of the name comes from. The talk name is kind of self-explanatory, I guess. But so I think we can go into kind of how Dennis and I met each other, being as he's from Ohio, I'm from Illinois. So I'll let him give his version of events here.
Yeah, and that was I forgot to mention that. I mean, the Rad Talk, the whole reason it's radiology, so we thought it was really rad. Also, the slang rad, meaning like kind of cool and whatever. And so yeah, that's kind of where we came up with the name. I'm glad you mentioned that tidbit. And Gage and I met. I was a traveler. My first travel job in Illinois, in Springfield, where he said he did his residency there. And I found out that, I don't know, you kind of go back and sonographers, I think we have we develop a relationship with the radiologist because we're talking to you guys all the time about different studies and things like that. And I found out you were a sports guy. And then I found out you play basketball and you like basketball, and I'm a big basketball guy, and I was looking for people to hang out with and play sports with and talk to, more, opinionated stuff with, especially NBA, because I don't know anybody who watches NBA. A lot of college people where I'm from, and I think I like was like, hey, here's my phone number if you ever want to hang out, and I left it on your desk, and I think you ended up texting me at some point, and we planned on like meeting up and just playing basketball at the local gym or whatever, and we went to the gym, we played
LA
basketball.
Fitness or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, LA Fitness.
Yeah.
And Gage came. He played basketball. I think he brought one of his buddies along as well, and we all three played. And then there was like, down the last game, Gage like, this is my last game, and I was like, yeah, I'm done too. But I was like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna play one more. And I ended up playing and dislocated my finger.
And unfortunately for
And
you, I'm not that kind of doctor. I can read it through an image, but I can't reduce it on the spot.
right. And so I was like trying to figure out how to reduce myself and pull it back in place. And then I thought better of it, and I went to the ER and had it reduced there and had the x-rays. Luckily, nothing was broken. And so I just had to wait for the healing of it being out of place.
I remember it got pretty fat. It got pretty swollen.
It was really bad. Yeah, I was trying to put a glove on. I remember like having the thing on my finger where it was holding it in place so I didn't like move it and stuff. Because if you dislocate it, it can easily be dislocated again.
Yeah.
And so I was like, trying to work again.
Yeah, that's where it all started. I think it helped because you kind of mentioned people that aren't in medicine, they don't understand the dynamic of the techs versus, the radiologist. Which in most aspects of radiology, it doesn't really matter. The techs don't really matter. But as you know, in ultrasound, ultrasound is very user dependent. So I depend heavily on you to get the images that I need to make the diagnosis or, tell the patient whatever. And I say that because that's what allowed us to, continue to talk and develop a friendship, is because we had to interact so much because I rely so heavily on you, at work. And then obviously we talked about things that weren't work related, and it developed from there.
Right. And I think in the hospital that we were at, I think that it was a teaching hospital. And so it kind of forced the residents to go in these departments and kind of learn how does an ultrasound, how do you do an ultrasound as a doctor? How do you do whatever? And so like we're helping train the radiologists on, or the residents at this point, to how to do an ultrasound and what it looks like, and those kind of things. And so we start working hand in hand with more, and then we start getting to know each other more and more on a personal level.
Yeah.
And then that just kind of grew. And I
remember you stayed for quite some time. I forgot what the cutoff. We could talk about it later, but there was a cutoff of, was it a year? Like you couldn't be somewhere longer than a year to be considered a traveler, and you pushed it. I think you stayed in Springfield almost that full year.
I did. Yeah.
Which, if I remember correctly, you haven't done that since. Like,
no,
all your future destinations from then, you haven't stayed that long.
No. Yeah, it's Springfield. I really, and everybody always asked me my favorite place I ever went, and I always refer back to the capital of Illinois.
People who aren't familiar with Illinois, when they hear you say capital, they think Springfield was nothing special. It just happened to be the capital city. Actually, when you refer to Illinois, most people think Chicago, and I always have to say no. I'm from the part of Illinois that's not Chicago. I understand Chicago's the biggest part of Illinois, but yeah, it was a smaller. I think it was what 120, 130,000 people, but
with two level one.
It was a good time.
Yeah.
It was a good time though, because there was you and other people they won't meet, but there were other travelers that were fun and interesting. And actually, I wasn't the only radiologist, right? We hung out with some of the other residents, a couple of the other residents actually. And it was as someone, I think I met you you were my first year of residency.
Oh, that's right.
You were my first year of radiology. You were my second year of residency, first year of radiology. So then, I don't know anyone still, even though I'm from close by. I didn't know anyone in town, and I didn't know anything about radiology. Like that's the thing that people don't understand is There's so much. You will probably always be better than me at ultrasound specifically, but back then you were so much better than me. It was incredible. So to have someone, you got to know and hang out with, and
Mhm.
you were able to, you were one of the few that were willing to teach me anything about ultrasound. Some of the other techs are a little, but
Right, right.
and then we met. I won't mention his name, but you know who I'm talking about. We met another guy, very interesting. He was fantastic. I haven't talked to him since, but that's an aside.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, we met at work, kind of developed our relationship through work, and then it just developed outside of work because we have similar. I think one, we have similar upbringings. Canton's a little bit much bigger than where I came from, but we're all from the Midwest, so it's a
Right.
very similar feel. So we had a similar story, similar upbringing, with similar interests outside of work, our work, similar interests at work. So that kind of helped, develop. Uh, Otherwise, I don't know that we would have.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, chance luck meeting. I mean, yeah, we definitely would have
mhm.
never have met. Yeah, I think that, and that's honestly, I mean, you guys were the biggest reason why we stayed at that point. Um, we could have, you can go anywhere you want to go. And we stayed there for, like you said, like almost a full year because it was just like we were having so much fun, whether we were playing cricket, um,
Yeah,
or,
we
or
play. God, yeah.
basketball or
We play
whatever.
cricket. We play basketball. We did what's it called? The escape rooms. We did a couple of
Oh,
those.
the escape room. Yeah, yeah, a
Those were
couple of
fun.
escape.
Even in a town like Springfield, which wasn't very big, the escape rooms were pretty fun.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
I
we
think
always
even
found.
when you're not doing it, you don't have to do anything fun if you enjoy the people you're with. It's a little bit
It's
different.
true,
Um,
right?
but so that's kind of how we
The,
met.
the
Why
party
we're still
bus. Don't forget
friends.
the party
The
bus.
party bus. Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah. That
it
was
was my birthday, and so we got a
yeah.
party bus to go to a baseball game. But the baseball game got rained out, and so we ended
It
up at
did.
the City
Yeah.
Museum in Missouri, crawling
Oh
through
my
these little.
God. And if anyone's ever been, right, they know that the slides or whatever you want to call them were so
Uh,
small. I couldn't do anything. I didn't fit in half of that stuff. So while you guys had fun, it was not a great experience for me because I just couldn't. I mean, it's for kids, I guess, but I
yeah,
couldn't do anything.
right.
And then we
Bull
did
riding.
yeah, the whatever that. There's a specific
Mechanical.
name for what it's called, but by the stadium, there's a specific name for that area that we were at. But yeah, we
Oh
went
yeah,
bull riding
yeah,
and did
yeah,
all
yeah.
that.
Mechanical.
I remember there was one of our other radiology friends who did the bull riding that you wouldn't expect to do it. Right, he doesn't have that kind
Mhm.
of personality, but it was fun to watch him get on there and do it.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I think that just all like really drew us all kind of closer together
yeah.
as individuals, not just and it just kind of formed like a really cool group of people. Whether you
Yeah.
were a fourth year resident or you were a sonographer or you were a nurse or
Hmm.
whatever, we were all just like people hanging out, and so that was kind of
Yeah.
cool.
That was what I enjoyed, especially coming here where I'm at now. The
Mhm,
dynamic between us and the techs is far different.
mhm,
But when we were with you guys, that group, nobody cared what anybody was, right? Resident
mhm.
versus tech versus, we just didn't care what we did. So
Nope.
there was no hierarchy, for lack of a better term, there's no hierarchy between us. We were just
Yep.
friends. Um,
That was cool.
so I think that gives a little, we're obviously going to expand on this. The more episodes we do, people will
For
get to
sure.
know us, our other friends and everything. But I think that's
Hmm.
kind of a good starting point as to where, how you and I met. So
Hmm.
I think the next thing we can talk about is kind of, why at first, why we wanted to do a
Hmm.
podcast. Like, why did we, it's been, what was that, 5 years ago, I guess, now that we met. So why are we just now doing it? Why are we just now deciding to start a podcast?
Right, right. Yeah, definitely. And I think, so I've had a podcast prior. I did a 13 episode podcast on a don't stop RVing. I'm trying to give it a plug, but it's long gone now.
Yeah.
Um, but it was all about traveling and seeing places and the business side, the recruiting side, and I talked a lot about different stuff with that, which I'm going to go probably into deeper now
Hmm.
because things have expanded. The world has changed
I
in
think
that period of
that
time.
stuff is so deep that it could. I mean, you did 13 episodes. That could have its own like its own series. There's so much that goes into health, into traveling.
Hmm.
But I think
For
that's
sure.
definitely something we can touch on later, because it's, as you know, with COVID, before COVID, it was big. COVID kind of halted it a little bit, but now I think things are starting, at least where I'm at, and I'm sure it's the same for you. They're starting to pick back up, and traveling is starting to become a huge
Yeah.
thing again. Not just for techs and nurses and stuff. Doctors are starting to do it as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah. It's a huge business, and the world has changed,
Hmm.
which is,
Yeah.
we'll see how the world continues to change. But yeah, I mean, I think we want us to, we kind of, I think we've talked about doing a podcast together for probably literal years.
Hmm.
I've wanted to do something with you, but I know that, you've been doing the residency, the fellowship, the school, focusing on that
Hmm.
kind of thing. And I've been working and other things. And so I
Yeah.
think now, your fellowship is about to be done.
Hmm.
And so you're going to enter as an attending.
Yeah.
Finally, that's awesome.
Thank God.
And
Yeah.
and so now we have that opportunity to kind of maybe have these, we're hoping to do at least weekly podcast, or however that,
Hmm.
every other 2 weeks. We'll see how that ends up falling.
Hmm.
But now we can talk about these different things that we've experienced over this travel period, and sports fun stuff that we're going to be talking about, whether it's the teams that we like, or the teams that you guys like, or the players and our opinions on that. We'll go over touch on different medical things as well,
Hmm.
with our backgrounds. And so that's kind of like
Yeah.
why I wanted to get into it, because I just think that at this point I've developed a plethora of knowledge, as seeing all these places, traveling for the past 6 years.
Yeah.
Um, and now Gage is going to be an attending, and so his knowledge of becoming a radiologist, is huge, I'm sure. And so it's just like I feel like it makes sense to
Hmm.
me, to finally have something that we can like share with people, that maybe
Yeah.
they can get something from, whether it's just our awesome sports opinions on our favorite sports teams, or medical, giving you guys an opinion of like, maybe it can help you learn something that you can use to make a
Hmm.
more informed decision for
Yeah.
yourself. Um,
Yeah. I
and so
think
yeah, I
this
think
the
that,
sports aspect obviously makes sense, right? Because we briefly told people that we played, soccer, basketball, whatever, growing up.
Mhm,
So the sports aspect makes sense. I think kind of the unique aspect we have is the traveling with
mhm,
the radiology perspective, healthcare perspective. We'll talk about things that aren't radiology related. My knowledge is just much more limited on things outside of radiology. And I think health is a big thing currently. Obviously, COVID, everyone is
right.
people, I think, wanted to be more health literate uh, after COVID, during COVID, whatever.
Right.
But radiology is unique in the sense that I don't think that anyone outside of radiology knows what radiology is, what we do, the services we provide, because they're kind of, um, I guess, in the dark, in the shadows, if you will. How we read in, dark room, poorly
Mm,
lit, computer screen, all that kind of stuff. But I
mhm,
think this could give us a chance to kind of explain, especially from your perspective as well, because you actually deal with the patients when they come in for the ultrasound. And
right.
I do some procedures. So my experience with that is like the ordering physician doesn't tell them what's about to happen. So they
Mhm,
have no idea what they're about to get into when they come see
right.
me. So I'm usually the first person that tells them, hey, this is going to involve a needle. You're not going to be put to sleep, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
So I
Right.
think that kind of stuff um, will make this a little unique. We can explain people,
Mhm,
what we do, why we do
right.
it, how we do it, that kind of
Right.
stuff. Obviously, we can
Yeah.
teach. I think you'll reach the traveling audience much more. And we talked off recording. I'll probably reach the maybe the pre med or the already
Mhm,
established, kind of doctor, or
mhm,
the aspiring doctor, with
right.
my opinions. Um, so I
Right.
think the combination of the two is kind of unique. Nobody
Yeah.
really
And
mixes the two. Um, Go ahead.
right. And I think, and to even touch off of that, I think that we're going to be able to talk to an audience where, um, the sonographers complain certain things about the
Yeah.
radiologists,
Hmm.
and the
No, it's
radiologists complain certain things
yeah,
about the sonographers, or the protocols, or the
yeah,
things are
yep,
vary from hospital to hospital, and little changes with this and that. And so
yeah,
maybe that we give a perspective to a sonographer that thinks this, when
uh
really they don't understand
yeah,
um, your guys' point of view. And so we can touch on those little things, and maybe like help clear up an understanding gap between the two
hmm,
professions in that way. And so just like we have, I don't know, between the medical side and the fun side that we're going to talk about sports wise, I think we have a
yeah,
lot of just generalized knowledge that we can help inform people. And I think
yeah.
it just finally makes sense to like have this particular
I think
dialogue.
time on my end. Time was the biggest. Residency is hard to explain to people that haven't done it in terms of the demand. I've never done something where I've had to like. I mean, you go to work, you work your 8 hours, 12 hour, whatever it is, and then I have to go home and like read about work. Like that's something we'll eventually talk about. It's like that's people don't understand how um, medicine is learned or taught. There's a lot more self-teaching than you would imagine by reading books, articles, journals, whatever. So for me, the time and the mental energy wasn't there because I was focused on residency and finishing that, and then fellowship was even worse, even more demanding. But like you
Mhm,
said, I'm only 2 months out from finishing, so the time is finally there. Um,
mhm,
so and then
for
I
sure.
think the the sports thing would be a little different as well because we're not
Mhm,
like I feel like you get a lot of sports podcasts and they're just like super nerds, right? It's all stats, it's all analytics, it's all this, it's all that. I think you'll get
mhm,
less of the stats analytics kind of aspect. You'll get some, right? I think you need
right,
to do some of that, but I
right.
think you'll get a lot more just opinions. And I don't
Mhm,
think it'll be just like you're not going to get like Stephen A. type opinions. I think one thing that's nice about doing your own podcast is when you watch shows like Stephen A. like what's it, First Take, and then
it's undisputed
Undisputed
with.
with Skip and Shannon. Yeah, you can
Mhm,
tell sometimes it's forced, right? Like Skip
mhm,
obviously hates LeBron, whether it's real or not real. If any topic about LeBron is coming up, you know what side he's going to be on, and you know what
mhm,
side Shannon's going to be on because they're always just opposite of each other. I don't
mhm,
think you'll get that here. If you and I are opposite, it's because we're opposite.
right,
If we're on the same page, it's just because we're on the same page. We don't have anyone telling us kind of what take we should give.
right.
Um,
Yeah, this is going to be the whole truth, straight from the heart,
yeah,
the way we feel, and so you're gonna get to see that, whether we agree, whether we disagree.
yeah.
It's all going to be real.
Hmm. I
Um,
think we'll focus more heavily on a couple sports. I'm not a huge hockey guy. I don't watch hockey, even playoff hockey. I don't really watch
right.
baseball. Playoff baseball, I'll watch. But I
Hmm.
think our main focus is going to be the NFL and the NBA.
For sure.
Um, and out of those two, even I think we both do, but I know for sure I like the NFL more than I like the NBA.
Hmm.
Luckily, it's not as long, but it's a pretty long season, so you have a ton of stuff you can talk about.
Right.
And I think it's kind of unique currently because our teams are on opposite ends of the spectrum. So
Hmm.
it's not all, we won't both be down and we won't both be up, um,
Right.
which, maybe that changes this year. Who knows? But
Yeah. We always
um,
hope, as a Browns fan, I always hope things change, but
yeah. And as a you're a Browns fan, so you have a lot of controversy at the quarterback, right? Because you guys give an unprecedented contract to a guy that had a little bit of a history before you gave it to him.
sure.
Not before, like during, like while you gave it to him, this history of his was going on.
Hmm.
And I'm a 49ers fan,
Hmm.
and our quarterback situation has also been very controversial, up and down the last, what Trey Lance is now in his third year, I guess, going into his third year. So the last 2 or 3 years, and you watch football, the 49ers are a quarterback away from, I mean, realistically, two
For
or
sure.
three Super Bowls in the
Hmm.
last, 5 years.
Hmm.
Um, so
100%.
I think that'll make for an interesting. Obviously, we'll talk about the other teams, but we'll know the most about our teams that we follow on a daily basis.
Hmm.
So I think that'll make for some
Yeah.
interesting topics.
Yeah, it's gonna be great, and I'm with you too. I may lean a little bit more towards the NBA, but man, I get so excited when
Yeah,
it's Sunday and it's
yeah,
Thursday. football, and you're like, oh, okay, this is awesome.
Yeah.
But the NBA, there's just so many. It seems like there's so many games. I don't know,
As a
82
yeah,
games.
as a NBA, yeah, that's what does it for me is the 82 games. It's so long, and
Mm,
we're what 3 games into the first round, and you can already tell there's a
mm,
difference, right?
yeah.
These guys turn it up they turn it
Yeah.
up a notch when the playoffs start. Like
Yeah.
the what I forget which game I was watching,
Hmm.
but the score was 90 something to 80 something in like the fourth quarter, and I'm like, this never happens, right? People,
Hmm.
what's the biggest complaint about the NBA is they don't play defense.
Right.
They play defense when they want to, right? Like
That's
the
true.
scores in the playoffs are much lower than they are during the regular season, or they appear to
Mhm.
be, seem to be anyway.
Right. Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so playoff basketball for me is much more fun. It's the
Hmm.
same lure as the um, what's it? God, the tournament, March Madness,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's not like these guys change. They just everyone focuses a little bit more
Hmm.
because there it's a little different scenario. You know, one game and you're done, but things
Hmm.
ramp up when something's on the line. So NBA playoff basketball is much better than regular season basketball.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
also have to transition from like I don't have a favorite team. I don't know if you have a favorite team, but my favorite player obviously was LeBron, and he's now aging himself out of the NBA. He won't be around much longer.
Yeah. I think he'll make it till
So
his son.
as
He'll play with his boy.
yeah, so he's got 2 or 3 years left at
Hmm.
best, and
Yep.
then I think the NBA gets a little more interesting. We'll see how the
Which is
ratings do when
interesting.
he decides to leave.
Which is interesting because your favorite player is actually when I was in high school. I was a freshman in high school. We played. My high school played in the Final Four against LeBron, and we obviously lost because I think LeBron beat
Yeah,
everybody in high
yeah,
school. But it was kind of cool to get to go to see LeBron. I mean, I've been watching LeBron since he's been a junior in high school,
yeah.
because growing up in Canton, he's from Akron, and so his whole
Hmm.
life, I've got to watch him grow up, and then be on the Cavs, be on my home team that I semi rooted for.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so I've seen LeBron a long time, and so it's crazy everything that he's done, which is cool that he was your favorite player, is your favorite player.
yeah.
Um,
So I think
and so
we'll
yeah,
have
those
plenty to talk about with that, you know,
yeah,
with the NBA and all that kind of stuff. So I think the NFL and the NBA was more than enough to
hmm
cover with the healthcare, and then I think we'll probably talk about some other
oh for
you know
sure.
healthcare non sports related stuff,
Hmm.
stuff about our lives, stuff
Hmm.
that's going on in the world, yeah, you know, stuff like that. Um,
Right.
I think if I had to play like a you know for anyone that listens like a general overview, I think we would probably do. You'll have sports in every episode, right? There'll be a sports segment in every episode,
Hmm. Hmm.
dominated by whatever is on TV right now. So right now it's the NBA
Yeah.
playoffs.
Hmm.
4 months from now, it's going to be training camp, you know, for the NFL or and then opening day and all that kind of stuff. I
Hmm.
think we'll always have a healthcare podcast or a healthcare segment just because you and I, it's our job, our
Right.
daily job. Um,
Yeah.
and then I think I personally would like a segment where we talk about other stuff,
Hmm.
whether it's answering questions, you know, thoughtful questions, just off the wall, kind of stupid questions, where we,
Right.
you know, rank certain whatever we rank X, Y, Z,
Hmm.
whatever we want to do. Just kind of a segment where we don't have to, because I feel like for sports you kind of have to know what's going on, right? So you have to
Hmm.
watch the games, look at the scores and stats, and yada yada. So that takes
Right.
a little bit of work, right? Like you have to actually sit down and watch the games, pay attention.
Yep.
Obviously, health our job is work, right? So that requires
Hmm.
us to focus. So it's nice to have maybe a segment where we don't have to like process just deep
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
You can just talk about whatever happens and you know
Hmm.
just go from there. Um,
Yeah.
so
I think the viewers are going to get a lot of fun from both aspects, whether it's the learning aspect of the medical side or the fun aspect. You can
hmm
see a little bit more of our personalities and the
hmm
fun things that we enjoy. Whether I'm talking about pickleball because that's my newest hobby.
This
As
hobby,
I'm
good.
starting to get a little, I'm starting a little get older,
Yeah.
um, I'm getting into that, and so you'll kind of just get to see us kind of grow with this podcast. Um, and learn about us, and hopefully we want to learn about you guys as well. And if you send in questions, maybe we can rank things like Gage said, or just however you guys see that format evolving.
hmm
Um, and we'll try to label things depending on how the podcast is as well. Whether, the first 5 minutes we're going to talk about sports, the next 10 minutes we're going to talk about medical, the next 5 minutes we talk about whatever that is. And
Yeah.
so we'll make sure that if you guys want to skip around or what parts that you're more interested in, you can go to those parts too.
Hmm.
This is a learning curve for us, so bear with
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. I've never done a podcast. Dennis has some experience, but I've never done anything like this.
Yeah.
So I think it's fun. Obviously, it's a
Hmm.
very saturated market. Everyone's doing a podcast right now, but I think it's still, I could see why. It's kind of
Hmm.
fun. And we
Hmm.
haven't even done, we haven't even started doing anything yet.
Yeah.
Um,
I
I
think I
think,
think the one. Oh,
go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say, I think one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to do this is I get to me and Gage talk constantly,
Yeah.
whether like texting, like I'm always throwing him some stupid piece of information, and he
Yeah.
tells me his opinion on it,
Yeah.
and so I think this just kind of gives us a format where you guys can kind of join, you can listen in on all of my crazy ideas and thoughts, and see how Gage is gonna answer those crazy ideas and thoughts, and
Yeah.
you're kind of going along with us for this,
Yeah.
as opposed to me just sending it to him in a text message or whatnot, which I do a lot. So
I think it'd be fun. I
yeah.
think the last or another thing I kind of want to talk about, I have a few answers already in mind, which is kind of unfair to you, but I think I warned you about this, kind of where
Hmm.
you're like like how or who you want to model, yourself for this podcast after, like what creators inspired you to do, want to do a podcast, or you want to be like them.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I definitely, I really, I like Pat McAfee.
Yeah,
Um,
I think Pat's a big one. He's a very and he's from Pennsylvania, I think,
right.
right, which is
Right.
right next to Ohio. So you guys grew up very similarly.
And his co-host is actually AJ Hawk, which played at Ohio State.
Yeah. So
And
it's
so
funny that you mentioned those two because out of the dynamic, I'm going to be AJ Hawk. He doesn't give you much emotion, right? He's a very straightforward guy, but when he says
mhm,
something, he's hilarious. I don't know if he's
yeah,
trying or not, but when he actually does, he's hilarious.
it's true.
So it's a funny dynamic because I'm more like him, and you're going to be
Hmm.
more like
Pat,
Pat McAfee. So
for sure.
I've
Yeah,
watched
and
his show a lot too. So
I like him. And then even, I don't know, like even like from a travel business side, Gary Vaynerchuk is like
yeah,
a big influence on whether his podcast or his videos or how he
yeah,
says things, does things, that I can see out in the internet world, has been a big inspiration for like me wanting to get out there and show people more about myself,
hmm,
and because I've learned so much from just looking at how other people are, and even when I was getting into the traveling world, I was like trying to research travel people, and and whenever you're trying to do something, you like the internet's out there, so you're like, where can I find out more information? Who are people who are doing this? And so I can see what they have to say about it. And so I think those were really big inspirations when I wanted to
yeah.
do this
Gary Vee
big.
is a big one. I don't follow him too much, but I know he's big on. I mean, what's the
Thing.
phrase? Like he wants people to be happy. He's like, do whatever makes you happy, right? There's no point in making 80 million a year if you're fucking miserable the whole time. He's like, if you would rather make 80,000 and be happy, then do it.
Hmm.
Um, where I kind of disagree with him is he's big on this yard sailing and eBaying, and I'm like, dude, that's not everyone can do that. I know like he got big off of that, and he had his dad's business and all that kind of stuff, but I do like him as well.
Yeah.
I think we have different inspirations because our personalities. One thing I haven't talked about that I enjoyed doing kind of before um, residency was video games, right? So I watched a lot of Twitch. So
Hmm.
a lot of the streamers on Twitch, I've kind of influenced, and some of them are, one of them's a little more authentic, right? Which is what I wanted to. I've talked to you about
Hmm.
previously. Is how I wanted us to kind of
Hmm.
present ourselves, is just be ourselves, and it's more authentic.
Hmm.
And there are some that his he's very one of them is very famous, but his friends are not. But he still like brought his friends with him. They like all live in this house, and he takes care of them. And now they all stream, and his audience has flowed over into their audience. So I think
Hmm.
kind of the authenticity of those kind of guys has been a lot of where I will take my inspiration from.
Mhm.
Um, Pat's a good one too. I like Pat because he's very authentic. He
Right.
has an animated personality though, something I don't necessarily have. He's
Yeah.
very animated.
I love
But there's
it.
another one actually. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. His name, I'm going to butcher. I think it's Caleb Presley. I think his name is. If you ever watch TikTok or YouTube or
Mhm.
Instagram Reels or whatever, he does kind of like satirical interviews with very famous people. Like he did one
Mhm.
with Drake. He's done one with Theo Vaughn, but
Oh.
it's almost like he's a different person when he does the interview as opposed to when he's not.
Mhm.
Um, but he's very authentic, very straightforward. And he's also
Mhm.
hilarious. Um, so
So,
those are kind of some of the inspirations.
yeah.
Um,
I
so
think, yeah, I think that's really cool because, hopefully maybe you get back into once this fellowship is done in a couple months, maybe you can get
hmm
back to watching your Twitch streams or get playing your enjoyment of video games or
yeah,
things like that. And so we can maybe we end up touching on some new video games that come out or
yeah.
that kind of stuff. And so
I could
there's just,
definitely be in the segment of not work, not healthcare related
yeah, for real. I mean,
things.
so yeah, I think that's where the viewers are going to have to, be ready for the evolution, I guess, of
hmm
changes, and we'll kind of see what you guys like or what you want to hear about, um, and kind of go with that. I mean, if anybody wants to reach out to us, we've got all of our social media handles as well.
hmm
You can, we're all rad underscore talk underscore DG. Follow us on Instagram.
So we got what? Yeah, Instagram. We got TikTok. We got Twitter. I think we have YouTube. We don't
Mm,
really do much, interacting there, but
right. But
I think
but
that's everything.
we'll get better at the interaction. So if you find us,
Yeah,
we'll find you. Um, and I don't know if you want to, if yeah, feel free to reach out to our social platforms. Let's focus on that. And I think
yeah,
that's the generalized idea of this is episode one.
yeah. And then I
uh,
think in the future, now that we've kind of got the introductory part out, we can talk about. I mean, the NBA playoffs are ramping up, so that's going to be big. We're going to talk about the NBA playoffs. We're going to
mhm.
talk about any kind of. It's a little bit late, but we have some NFL news. Jalen Hurts' contract and all that kind of stuff. I saw an interesting
All the
graphic
players
the
that
other
got
day.
suspended today. Did you see all the players that got suspended today for betting on the NFL? NFL players that were
I did not
there was like two NFL players that bet on the NFL, and I think the Detroit
active.
active Detroit Lions just
That's
got released. A couple people just got released from the teams because they were betting on NFL games as active players, and other players were betting on other sports while in the arena. And so they got suspended for 6 games. So yeah, I mean, it was still going to be some NFL news. People were
yeah,
still going to do stuff that they
yeah.
shouldn't do or whatever, or should do or whatever. Um, so yeah, we're always going to be something that we're going to
Yeah.
talk about and we'll dive deeper into. So
And yeah, I think in the next episode we're going to start. I want to hint on your traveling experiences, right?
mhm,
So people can get to know,
mhm,
what to expect from that. I'll
mhm.
talk a little bit about if there's any kind of radiology related stuff. But I think the traveling thing people are going to want to talk to because there's always people that are going to want to start traveling, right? Like it's still very big.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so there's
And
going to be people like you that were like wanting to start and wanting information, and what better source than someone who's been doing it for 5-6 years now.
right, definitely. Yeah, for sure. And then I'm excited to go over all that stuff and even maybe there's I don't know if the like traveling doctor world, and stuff like that. We'll
Oh, there's
dive
definitely there's the locums. Yeah, they travel quite a bit.
right
I don't think it's as popular as techs or nurses, but it definitely exists.
for sure. So we have a lot to talk about in the next episode. Hopefully you guys got a
Yeah,
good generalized idea of who we are and what to anticipate coming forward. Um,
yeah. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Like
yeah,
Dennis said, rad_talk_DG. I think we have an email, right? If people wanted to email,
yeah. If you want to
I
shoot
forget off the top of my head.
rad talk with dg at gmail.com. So
Yeah,
it's rad talk with Dennis and Gage. So rad talk with dg at gmail.com is our
yeah.
email. Feel free to email us.
Like, follow, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. I think it'll be fun to get some interaction that's
Mhm.
not just between you and me.
Right.
Um, but
Cool. Cool. And
all
well,
right.
and this is how we'll end our first episode, guys. Thanks for listening.